Okay, Alicia, you ready to go?
Ready to go.
Is that a yes?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Ready to go.
Okay, thanks. All right, good evening, everyone. This is the Hideout Utah Town Council regular meeting and public hearing, June 8th, 2023. This meeting is an electronic meeting with no anchor site. And I'm calling the meeting to order. Hopefully you are seeing the agenda on the screen. Somebody can confirm that for me.
Yep.
Thank you. And I'm going to take roll. So, Carol.
I'm here.
Hi, Carol. Thank you.
Hi.
Ralph. Ralph,
Sorry,
I see you.
I'm here.
I see you. I don't hear you. Bob,
I'm here.
you. Chris,
Here.
thank you. Sherry,
I'm here.
thank you. Okay. So we have the full council tonight and a quorum. The next item on the agenda is an update on Golden Eagle. I want to turn it to Polly. If you would provide some input on that. Are you here,
Yep,
Polly?
sorry, I am. I had to unmute.
Thanks.
Excuse me. So I don't have much update. There was a court hearing in May, I'm forgetting the date. And then the judge did not have a ruling, and she asked us to submit papers, both sides, which we did. And we're still waiting for her ruling. Those were submitted right before Memorial Day. And so we haven't received a ruling yet. In terms of progress with the infrastructure, we have not received any update to the storm drain plan directed to us. Or we haven't received anything having to do with that. And that was the main thing that we were waiting for before we could issue building permits. So we're still in a holding pattern, waiting for the judge's ruling and or waiting for Mustang to submit storm drain plans.
Okay. She did commit to responding relatively quickly, so hopefully we'll hear something from her in the next week and get on with it. Or we hear something from Mustang in the next week and get on with it. Thank you, Polly.
Sure.
All right, item 4. This is public input, and this is for items that we're not taking input on or are not on the agenda. And the way you do that is to use the raise your hand functionality in the Zoom. Okay, Chris, I see your hand up.
All right. Am I the only one who raised a hand?
So far.
Okay. Well, this Saturday is the 4th annual Jordanelle Area Cleanup Day, and Hideout is one of the sponsors. So from 10 a.m. till noon, we're going to be walking around the town, picking up trash and other debris that is like next to the road or in open space areas or not obviously on a construction site that has blown around from our, after the snow melted, a lot of junk became exposed. I would like to say it looks like some of the construction sites have kind of cleaned up a bit around their areas. So I want to thank, I think I have to thank perhaps Kathleen and Carol and Carol Custerly and whomever else may have reached out, including Public Works and their enforcement of, the rules as well as citations. But this is for the public to have a chance to do a public service project as a volunteer. So if you want to pick up your trash bags, you can come to Hideout Town Hall at 10 a.m., sign a waiver, and the sponsors will give you a trash bag. Bring your own gloves. You may want to buy one of those little reachers so you don't have to keep bending down. I did that 2 years ago. I think Carol did as well. It was like money well spent for this annual cleanup day. And then the reward, besides feeling good about contributing to your community, is there will be lunch served for volunteers over at the Overlook Restaurant in Black Rock Ridge, the Black Rock Resort. So I hope we can get a lot of turnout, including the council members or anybody they can arm twist. I think Sherry has been leveraging her community engagement group to try in each neighborhood to get people out. Plus we have various communication channels that we've put the word out. So I just wanted to say one last time that it's happening. And I hope we can get a good turnout Saturday.
Thanks, Chris. I hope so too. Additionally, as you, if you find, larger things, you can put them by the side of the road, not in the road, please, by the side of the road, and the Public Works guys will come around and get them loaded into a truck and hauled off. This is not a place to put your furniture. This is not refrigerators, not furniture, those kinds of things. But if there's parts of sheets of plywood around or those kinds of things that are a little awkward to be sticking in a plastic bag, you're certainly welcome to put them, on the earth side of the road by the street, and the guys will come grab them. Mr. Nailberg, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Yes, it is. Some of the residents of the town have expressed to me, and I'm sure some of the other people, the concerns that we have with the, let's call it the Shoreline Road drag strip, or at least some people seem to drive as if they're trying to qualify for a race. I know that the long-term plan, as we talked about earlier, is to put in some permanent speed bumps and remove the mats that we have now, which didn't hold up as well as we thought for the winter. I would just like to once again ask, maybe as a stopgap measurement to get people to slow down, to do two things. First of all, contact the police officer from Wasatch County, the sheriff's department, to increase the patrol specifically on that stretch of road. Maybe have a cop hiding at the intersection of East Overlook Loop and East Longview Drive, and then maybe to put some temporary barriers with maybe a sign that says slow down. If there's a mild obstruction in the road, such as a barrier or an orange set of cones, that will naturally cause people to slow down. I think that would serve the community well. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Bob. I had that conversation with Tim this afternoon. He's reached out to Wasatch County Sheriff's Office, so
Okay, good.
I'm sure we'll see them there. I talked with Dan about it yesterday. He thinks we have another temporary type speed bump, and he's working to get that laid in until we can get the contract approved for the paving and the concrete work later this summer. So we should be able to do that relatively quickly and not have to go the barrel route to neck it down. Any other public input? Okay, then I'm going to close public input and we're going to move to item 5. This is a public hearing. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to have 2 items. We're going to have a discussion about the amendment to the town budget for the current fiscal year. And then we'll take public input on that. And then after that input, the council will provide feedback around that budget, those budget amendment, and vote either to approve or approve with changes. So we'll get that going right now. And I'm going to turn it over to Katie. So we have 2 versions of this in here, I believe. I don't know. So
Yeah. This is
So I'll let
Katie
you try.
Shepley. Yeah, this is the first time I thought we had presented the restatement last month. And I went through it, giving all the variance explanations between budget and FY23. So I think, Alicia, you wanted Polly to address this, or we needed to do something different, because everything that I presented last month, nothing has changed except for, instead of us being about 266,000 short as I presented last time, we're only going to be about 204,000. We're able to improve by 50,000 by taking some additional funds from the Class C road funds for street. And then we also had an allocation over to the water fund for some administrative expense. So Polly or Alicia, if you could address what we are needing to approve this time. Polly, you're on mute.
Okay, so I just want to make sure this is this the proposed budget, or this is the old, but this is the adjusted budget?
This is
This
the
is-
adjusted budget for the current year.
Okay, so we realized that there was, we need to, amend the budget before the end of June. But we realized, unfortunately, that we need to have a public hearing for any time you adjust the budget. And so, you always reconcile it in June. So unfortunately, I think we are going to have a very short special meeting so that we can give the public adequate notice if they want to speak at the public hearing, because there was unfortunately some confusion because of the truth in taxation, thinking that the adjusted budget also would go to August, but it doesn't. So we can discuss this, but I don't recommend that you vote on this tonight. And but then we will have a separate meeting that will hopefully be very short when everyone's available before the end of June.
And I'd recommend, Polly, like everything in here is from Polaris. It only has the actuals through May FY23. So what I presented last month had my forecast for June. So I guess the special meeting would have to be at the early July when we close out June, or
Can't be.
It can't be.
Okay.
Has to be in.
Just estimate. So
I-
if the budget's not changing, if you don't need to amend anything, then there's nothing, then we just use whatever we have existing. But if the reconciliation requires an amendment to the budget for fiscal year 2022 to 2023, then we need to notice it for a public hearing before you can vote to accept that amended budget.
okay, and I don't know what the materiality is, but last month when I presented, we needed to adjust revenue by $172.4 thousand and expense by $172.4 thousand. That will have gotten better by about 40 grand. So we will be adjusting by about 122 to 132 between revenue and expense.
Okay.
Well, I would recommend, Katie, that we do it as of, some date like this week. And And then, because we have to issue it, and I think, do we have to give 10 days for this, Polly? I think.
Alicia, can you
So-
correct me? Is it 1 week?
I think it's 7.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay,
All right,
that,
so
that'll,
the
that will not,
earliest
that won't present
earliest
a
we'd be doing
problem
this
there.
is the 15th or so.
That's no problem. I already have the June forecast complete, so I could give that to you guys over the next couple of days. I'll have it to you by the end of the weekend and we can publish it Monday.
Okay, and I'll have I would
We can
suggest.
notice, we
Alicia-
can notice it. We can notice it as soon as we have dates. So let me ask the council members to please contact Alicia as quickly as you can as to what evenings after
6
the
p.m.
15th, because we
Oh,
have to give the 16th. Because it'll be tomorrow before she can do it. So what evenings after the 16th that you would have available for a 5-minute call or a 15-minute call?
Mayor, I'm from the 18th to the end of the month. I'm in Europe, so we'll let you know.
Yeah, I'm personally away for a few days the week of the 18th as well, so we may have to do it later. But we don't need 100% of the council, I don't believe, Polly. We
Sure.
just need a quorum, right?
exactly. Yep.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll send out the presentation that was presented last month through the end of May with the June forecast, and we'll update Polaris through the end of May. That is actually that is updated right now through the end of May, and you might have some June activity. All right, thank you.
Okay. So this will not be based on the requirements for noticing, which I didn't realize we hadn't. I thought it was a public hearing last time, but apparently not. So we'll do it.
Okay, perfect.
And get some time scheduled.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
And what's up?
And we'll move on to, sorry,
I was going to say what's up on. I was going to say what's next. Go ahead.
what's up next is the possible approval of the town budget for the fiscal year ending June 2024.
So Alicia, I'd ask you to scroll down to the submission that was updated. What she's provided in the document here is a submission we sent to the town council last week, and then I updated it for actuals through June 4th or 5th. And we've improved a little bit more, 232, now we're at 228, but I just updated it. So go down, Alicia, to the next section.
That's, I'm driving, Katie, not Alicia.
I'm sorry, if you go down, there's another presentation identical to this. This is what was given to the council last week.
Okay. Well, before I jump to that, I will comment that we did receive a comment on from one of the residents on the fees, on the water connection fee. I have been working with the team, and we have identified that there are some numbers that need to be adjusted there. So we will be doing that and providing that available to both the community and making changes in the schedule going, for the community. So thank you, Mr. Mueller. We appreciate you bringing that to our attention, and we're getting that fixed.
So this is the budget that's in Polaris. You can keep going down. This is all the detail that we've loaded in the system.
So do you want me to stop any of these, or you just want to go to the summary?
You just want to go to the summary. No, no one wants to hear me talk through all these lines. Okay, so this is the updated budget. I presented the budget in May, and we have improved a little bit between May and June. Instead of adding 2 FTEs, we're adding 1.5 FTEs. We're going to make the second employee we are going to hire a part-time employee. We had some savings associated with third-party engineerings. We had some of our employees not take family and spousal benefits. So we were able to reduce our benefit charges. And I added some additional subdivision application fees, as well as a little bit of miscellaneous good news of about 20 grand. So between all those, we have improved approximately 130,000 from what I had presented to the council last month. So I'll quickly go through. Nothing really has changed since last month. Our property taxes are going to be 633,000 in FY24, which is about 56,000 better. And that is property taxes about 20 grand, sales tax about 26,000, and our energy tax about 8,000. On license and permits, we're about 215,000 better, and that's predominantly building permits and our subdivision inspection fee. But if you look at our expenses, the total professional, you can see most of that is going to go to expense because we don't make any money on that. The rest of the difference between the 171 sitting in the professional services, that's unfavorable, specifically associated building permits and inspection fees. That and some additional salaries and wages make up what we are favorable in the license and permits. Miscellaneous revenue, we're going to take advantage of some of the cash that we have, and we are going to invest it in CDs and or bank accounts that are giving us about 4.5% to 5% interest. So we are going to start investing all those dollars, and because the interest rates are so good right now. So net, we're improving about $324,000 in our revenues from FY23 to FY24 for $1,725,000 is our revenues for this year, for next year. You can see under salary and wages, we're about 115,000 unfavorable. That's due to the additional 1.5 FTEs, a part-time employee moving to a full-time, as well as the addition of spouse and family health benefits. That coupled with the COLA increase of about 5%. Total administration is unfavorable about 17,000. The majority of that is related to additional training, some IT support that we are going to need, and upcoming election expense, as well as your standard inflation of 5.5%. Professional services, I talked about, it's the offset to your license and permits for building permits and inspection fees. The 10,000 unfavorable for public safety is us adding about $6,000 for noxious weeds, and incremental for the animal control and police for about 5,000. Both the animal and control and police is about the equivalent of about 5% year-on-year COLA increase. 21,000 unfavorable for streets, and that's due to increased road investments. And then in our parks, we have investment in parks and trails and some community events. As it relates to total debt, we had a few penalties that we had this year that we had to catch up on, and next year we are filing everything, and there are no issues outstanding as it relates to penalties. So net, you can see my expenses are $1,953,000. I am going to be $347,000 unfavorable. So you can see at the bottom, in FY23, I expect to be about $204,000 unfavorable. Next year, I expect to be $228,000 unfavorable. So we're holding the line pretty tight on our expenses. We're going to try and capitalize on more revenues. We're going to try and continue to control our expenses, but we are going to have to go into our capital funds for FY23 for about $200,000. And then to be able to make up some of the FY24 budget, we will be increasing property taxes, and that will cover the $228,000.
I'd have to say, Katie, with these kinds of gaps, it's going to be hard for me to be comfortable with. I love the community events, but we got to find a way to fund them better.
Yeah, we didn't spend and we did not spend much on community events this year. So you can see it was 9,000, and actually that was a little bit of parks and trails. For about 5,800, we added some park benches and a few things, in community development was only 3,500, and that was all the events that we had for the town of Hideout. We're hoping to have community events for the town of Hideout in the tune of about 13,000 next year. That will be a couple concerts and the bike event. So we can continue
Okay,
to
we'll
control expenses, Mayor. Yes, we'll do the best job we
yeah.
can to continue to cut
Keep
expenses.
our eye on it. Yeah.
Yep, and I am keeping a list of some opportunities and risks. So going forward, this year we've done a much better job showing the council in January the results for second quarter. We showed the results for first quarter at the end of first quarter, and we showed the results for third quarter last month. So if in addition to doing that going forward, I will show the council some opportunities and risks where I think that we can save some money, as well as where we might have some additional risk.
Great. Thank you.
So the next
Pop down
section,
here.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we'll talk about the water fund. So you can see in the water fund for total water services, we have about 8,700 favorable to FY23. We do have an increase in our water, sewer, and storm services for about 150,000, but we collected extra this year for standby fees because we did not bill standby fees in FY22. So we did 2 billings in FY22 and FY23 in FY23 that we don't have in FY24. So that was 135. So that's why you don't see such a big increase there. Then we have the water connection fees. We have an increase in meter connection fees, and that's predominantly due to increase in certificates of occupancy. And then we have the miscellaneous revenue here. We're going to invest our excess cash as well. We're going to put them in very high interest bearing accounts or CDs. And we should be able to get a nice chunk of change there as one of our opportunities that we identified for this year. Offsetting that in salaries and expenses, we do have higher expenses. We have the 5% COLA increase. Here we had the spouse and family benefits, which is a significant benefit to our employees. And we're hoping that it'll help attract the employees as well as retain our current employees and make us more competitive. We also have the additional 1.5 employees plus the 1 employee moving from part-time to full-time. In the employee section, I do take every one of the employees. We determine what work they do from the water fund versus the general fund, and we allocate their time appropriately. And we do take a look at that mid-year to make sure we're on target with that. Public Works, we have approximately $318,000 deterioration. And we do have a lot of different activities that we're working on for next year. We have obviously the water meters for the new construction, for the certificates of occupancy increase there. And we also have more building permits. We have some repairs. We're putting some lids and doing some additional repairs for the sewer. We have some sewer maintenance that is mandatory for us to be able to do for cameras and cleaning and water line repair and maintenance. This is going to be a contract that we have with JSSD, and it'll be associated with emergency work. And that is a new item for this year as well. We also have some ditch maintenance, some silt removal, some sod hydro seeding, and construction repairs. So all of that is the combination of the 300,000 increase, 318,000 increase in Public Works. For the general water, that's just a general JSSD water increase. The administration, we really kept to the 5.5% inflation, and the total professional, also keeping our costs very tight there with only about 2,000 increase, and that's predominantly legal and our audit and accounting. So we're staying really tight on those to ensure that we can keep costs down. So net, you can see I had 483,000 favorable for FY23 surplus. Next year, I have now a surplus rather than a deficit that I showed last month. And that's due to, again, some benefits we took associated with the benefits and the employees, as well as some reduction in some of the administrative and a little bit more in the miscellaneous revenue associated with higher interest rates. So I'm going to be about 26,000 for next year, still in the black, which is great, but it is a deterioration to this year, predominantly due to the Public Works additional work that needs to be done and the salaries and benefits.
Okay, questions from council on the proposed budget for 24, both general fund and or water fund, before I open it up to public input? I'll
Yeah.
start by saying I appreciate the work done by the budget team from last week, where we had a much larger gap, and appreciate the work that the team has done to tighten it up and reduce the deficit significantly.
And Mayor, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Hey, Katie, thanks. Super work here. And you know, I've been following, so this is good positive news from the last time I looked at this. And so we have about, and keep me corrected here, we have what, 1.1 million in our enterprise fund that we can draw down on, minus about $250,000 that you can't draw from, or it has to stay in the fund, I believe. Is that correct? Is that
The what?
about it?
The
Yeah.
1.1 with less than 250, sorry, are you talking about the capital funds?
Yeah,
Yes, we have about $1 million of capital funds, 1.1 million of capital funds. We'll draw down 204,000, and we'll have about, 750, 800,000 left. And it's all in the general fund. We can't touch anything in the water fund associated with the general fund for their
Yeah.
capital funds.
okay, so we'll draw down about 200 out of the 1.1 minus the 250 we can't touch, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's where I thought we were at. If we don't have a deficit in 24, that would be a positive, then we wouldn't have to touch anything, right?
Well, I would hope we wouldn't have to, because the expectation is we will, we are running a deficit. When we run a deficit in the budget, we will go to the state and ask them for an increase in property taxes for the town of Hideout only. So that 228 should be made up with increase in property taxes. So hopefully we don't have to draw down anything next year.
Okay, good. And the 228 is about a half a year's taxes, roughly, maybe a little bit less of what we're currently due. So that means a good chunk of a property tax. Did you work those figures out in your head by any chance?
Yeah, when you look at it, the property taxes we get are about 300,000 in the general fund. Obviously, that does not include our MITA property, where we get about another 100,000 in property taxes. So net between the MITA fund and the property taxes in the general fund, we get about 400,000. So if it's 228,000, it would be about a 50% increase in the town of Hideout taxes.
Yep. Makes sense. Not really good news, but at least we know where we're going here for at least a year.
No, but I'll stress it's the town of Hideout taxes, which are probably the smallest item on your tax bill, or one of the smallest items on the tax bill. It won't impact the Wasatch property taxes, which is the biggest chunk.
And there is a process. I mean, there's no guarantee on this tax increase, Ralph. There's a proposal that'll come forward to the public for input and so forth. So we'll see where that ends up. But our goal would be to generate enough revenue to keep us in the black and flat, so that we're not running at a deficit.
And we've got teams working on how it is that we can bring additional funds into the town over the next couple of years that'll start pulling in revenues for us. So we won't have to, hopefully we won't have to run at such a deficit going forward.
Yeah, well, you and I are on that same team, but it's going to take a while.
Yep.
Katie, we both know that's not going to happen overnight.
No,
So-
no, I said in a couple of years. To be specific, it would be FY26 before we see some of the big benefits on some of the projects we're working on. You'll see a little bit in FY25, but you'll see it in FY26 and FY27. You're correct.
Well, we're both correct and it's too big. So it'd be nice to accelerate this.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. We're about where we were and what thinking at least I had from the approximate numbers. And, but by doubling it, it would go from like 0007 something to almost 000015, which would be at kind of the top of the heap of tax rates. Right now, we're kind of in the middle, I guess. So anyway, food for thought. We got to accelerate the revenue side.
Right, accelerate the revenue side, keep control of the expenses, and just every quarter, like I said, we'll present the actuals to budget. We'll monitor those very closely. We did it in FY23. We'll continue to do it in FY24, and we'll talk about opportunities and risks that we can take advantage of in the current year.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. And I think just my only input here was, just so everyone understands where things are headed and maybe for how long.
Okay, thank you, Ralph. Any other questions on budget from council members?
Yeah, hey, this is Chris. If you could scroll down to the enterprise fund. So there's a pretty major jump for Public Works Department in the enterprise fund. I think you
Right.
might have touched on a few of the reasons why, but can you expand a little bit more or repeat what you said about
Sure.
why we see such a large jump there?
Yep, I can go through it. We have water line repairs and maintenance are one of the biggest charges, about $150,000. And that is water line maintenance, and it's needed on a go forward basis. We should have been doing it, and we need to start doing it in earnest. And in FY24, we have 150,000, and in year 2 through 5, we're going to put another 100,000 in. So this is for a new maintenance contract with JSSD to do a lot of this water line repair and maintenance. We have $70,000 for sewer maintenance, and that is a new expense at FY24. And it's also going to be done yearly. It's a percentage of the town done every year. So it's not the whole town being done, and it's required by the state. That is 70,000. 20,000 is for water meters. 71,000 is for, well, these are actual dollars. The better worse on the water meters is only about 18,000. We have sewer lids and sewer repair we have to do for 15,000. We have ditch maintenance for 8,000, silt removal for 8,000, sod hydro seeding for 5, construction repairs, pipes and basins for 10. And we have about, on miscellaneous other repairs, about 20.
Just a curiosity, the JSST contract for water line maintenance and repairs, are we going to be digging up roads and things for that also need to be repaired?
That's
If Tim is on the line, I would
Tim
defer
Downs
to him.
for
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm here. Go ahead.
Hey, Tim, this is Chris. So my question was regarding the water line maintenance and repairs that's coming up with JSST. Is that going to involve digging up other infrastructure like roads that then need to be repaired? And
Yep, and that's why we kind of have that bigger cost in our roads because of that. So there will be some road maintenance and construction to access those water lines, obviously. Yep.
And that's all reflected in the budget?
It is. Yep. That's why we kind of have a bigger number in our road budget.
And I'll be watching this because, if something does extend the useful life of the asset, it could be capitalizable. Right now, with the way it's being described, it is not going to be capitalizable, but I will be watching that carefully next year to see if we can capitalize it and amortize it over, 10 to 30 years, depending on what it is.
Hey, Katie, just a suggestion maybe, or food for thought anyway. And that is, each of these line items have the detail in them.
Yep.
And then we have a big, so you can go to the detail sheet and look at Public Works Department, just as you were walking through that. But what might be useful, I mean, certainly in business it is, where, we know what the big items are, and going into 24, and, maybe just highlight those, not on a quarterly basis, but almost on like a monthly basis, so that we can, take a look at where things are in the red and track them. I'm sure you're doing that, but maybe it would be useful for the council to understand and the town to understand where we're kind of going. So kind of.
Yeah. And Ralph, it's interesting you say that, because I did get together with obviously Jan and Carrie and Dan and Tim and all of them. And what we are going to do going forward is we're going to segregate these by the various people's responsibilities, so that every quarter or every month we can give them their numbers, but every quarter they can come back and explain to us how we're doing with what they're specifically accountable. So giving them their own line items and having them be accountable for these, they can explain them on a monthly and a quarterly basis. And then when we come into the budget for FY25, they have their own budgets going forward. I think that's going to help significantly, so they understand where we're spending all the money.
Sounds like P&L in business, where you've got managers responsible for their own P&L. Yeah,
Exactly.
probably a good thing, especially since we have good qualified people.
I've mentioned to the council and the community before that over the years, the town has been deficient in doing a lot of the routine work that it should have been doing. And, we're stuck having to roll up our sleeves and do some of it. And because some of it's degraded to the point where we actually have to do additional work because we weren't keeping it up, like there's going to be valves we're going to have to replace and stuff like that, because they weren't exercised, and so they don't work anymore. So that makes it harder for us to isolate when we do have a leak, because we can't close the nearest valve sometimes, but it doesn't work. So those kinds of things we have to go back and do. It's unfortunate, but it's I'm glad we're aware of it now, and taking the steps that we need to do as a community to make sure that the infrastructure that supports us is being properly maintained, so we don't get ourselves into a really critical situation.
Apologize for the dog. I'm on vacation visiting my daughter in Minnesota, and she has a dog, and someone rang the door. Sorry. Any other questions anyone has regarding the FY24 budget?
First from council, and then I'm going to open it up for the public. But there's nothing more from council, then I'll open it for public input on the budget for fiscal year 23-24. Again, the way you do that is the raise your hand functionality in the Zoom. Okay, Patricia, I see your hand up, so you should be able to unmute.
That was
There you
quick.
go.
Sorry. Yes, thank you. So I'm curious about statements that were made at the last meeting about the millions that have been spent on infrastructure, because I don't see it in the budget. And you just mentioned that basically it's about properly maintaining the infrastructure. And I might have missed some of the beginning minutes, but was it a lack of revenue, or why was the maintaining the infrastructure not done previously?
Well, we have
I'm
been,
afraid I can't answer that.
the infrastructure is relatively new, and we've incurred expenses over the last couple of years on the streets. You can see that it is building year over year. You don't see the millions and millions of infrastructure costs, because on the infrastructure, be they streets, storm, sewer, water, any of that, a lot of that infrastructure has been capitalized. And when you look at the water fund, you can see the depreciation expense. I think it's about $215,000. So we depreciate that infrastructure expense over the life of the asset.
Okay, right, I see that. And so do you publish a balance sheet besides the budget?
We can definitely publish the balance sheet. We have not done it in the past. You could see the balance sheet with all the assets in it. I believe, I have not seen anything yet. I noticed it's in the package, but the auditor has all the financials in this package. So you'll be able to see the income statement, the statement of changes, the equity, you'll be able to see the balance sheet, you'll be able to see everything. So we'll go through that shortly, but if you look at the rest of the package, you can see everything in there. So
Thank you.
So
yeah.
specifically, Patricia, there are, I mean, there's a sewer project underway right now, down near Shoreline 2, where we're putting in a brand new lift station, designed for both current and future capacity, complete with some redundancies, so that we have the ability to continue to do the right work on it, because we can move wastewater through multiple lines. So if we have to get in one line, we can do that. That one's mostly covered in the 22-23 budget, although the work is still not complete, so there'll be some carryover there. But it's capital carryover, so that's still comes off of that, the approval back then. We have another sewer project in the map for hopefully next year, for the upside of town, the uphill side of town, where we can do a different tie-in and improve the systems up that way. And we've got some water projects that we talked about here, that we've talked about in the council before, where we've got, because the way that the town has evolved, a number of the subdivisions have water lines that are dead ends. They're a line up along the end of a road, and then they stop. And so when you have a water system that has a static endpoint, you end up with pressure variations in the line. And our goal is to try and loop a number of those to improve the performance and even it out for everyone, as well as improve the total maintainability of the system. So, but we can certainly provide the list of projects. I think we've talked about it once before. We can certainly do that. So Katie, would you make a note? Let's highlight those for the residents.
So I'm a newcomer. I bought a lot, but I'm in that period of trying to get a building permit, but I've been on the website many times, and so for example, when they put out the message that, oh great, you're having a meeting on June 8th, and the budget will be reviewed, and the budget is available on the website. It's actually not available on the website when it comes out. And so I talked to Alicia, and Alicia's like, yeah, I need, by protocol standards, I have to send out the message about so far ahead of time, but the budget's not necessarily available until after that. Anyway, point being is that I appreciate all those things, but for those of us who are really trying to get a better handle on the town and the history of the budgets and the capital projects, I can't find that on the website. I mean, you can go and look at past budgets, but they don't have balance sheets, etc. So could you tell us or advise us on how we could get that information?
Well, I think all the financials were published for FY '22 in early FY '23. So we do publish them, and like I said, you'll see them in the rest of the packet. Are you wanting to see them quarterly, or I guess
No,
I'm
so
trying
there,
to-
you're saying that all the financials for all of fiscal 22 are on the website?
Well, for 21, they were on, the auditor just finished and he's presenting tonight. So they are on the website now because I believe, Alicia, this is posted and all of his stuff will be posted, I believe. So yes, it will be. We're a little bit behind to do the FY '22. The auditor had a lot of other projects and activities he had to finish. And we said we'd be presenting this now, so he took advantage of the excess time.
Okay, well, you know what? It's not, as long
We
as.
can, we can do a better job with that, Patricia. I hear you and I think you're right. And we need to do a better job of making sure that everybody has a good shortcut to the financials. We have a revamp project underway for the website to make it a little easier to navigate. That's going to take a bit still, but in the meantime, we can certainly find a way to make sure that all the financials are an easy point. So we'll take that under as a goal, and Alicia and Katie can work on that. We'll get it figured out for you.
Oh, that's terrific. Thank you.
Okay. And this is published, right, Alicia? Everything the auditor gave to you today and he's presenting today has now been published, correct?
That's correct, yeah. I haven't put it up to the public notice website just because I got it all so late and put all together so late. So I apologize, Patricia, but it is on our website. If you look under the meetings and agendas tab and then go to the packet for this meeting, it's all there, so.
And when we do the new website, let's have a separate area for financials so they can look at them quarterly, how we're progressing through the year.
100% agree. And that's definitely on my, yes, I've wanted
Okay.
that for a long time. So yes.
So Patricia, we're getting a lot more sophisticated in what it is that we do. This year we did present and walked people through what was happening in FY '23. We're going to further improve that in FY '24. We'll get it more publicized. And for the FY '23 results, which close on this at the end of June, we will definitely try and get those a lot more quickly audited and published.
Great. Thank you very much.
I don't see any more hands up for public input on the fiscal 23-24 budget. And so I'll close that input and we'll go to so is there a resolution for this, Alicia or Polly, or how are we doing this?
So because we're doing truth and taxation, this will get continued to your August meeting.
Okay. So therefore, because the way it's written here, there's with possible approval for the town board.
Right. But my understanding, we're doing truth and taxation hearing.
We
in
are doing
August.
truth and taxation.
So yeah,
we need to continue this, a motion to continue this to the July meeting or the August meeting.
Usually you do it in August and we will get the date from the county. I believe it's either the state auditor or the county. They will tell us what date we can hold the truth and taxation meeting, because they make it so that if there's a truth and taxation for, let's say, the school district, the day doesn't conflict, so that they're not being held at the same time.
Gotcha. All right.
So,
So I need a motion to continue the budget fiscal for the fiscal year ending June. I should say June 30th, 2024. By the way, not June 20th. But the budget, continue the budget discussion to a date to be named in August.
So moved.
Second,
Okay. Chris,
Yes.
thank you. Sherry,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
thank you. Ralph
Yes.
and Bob,
Yes.
thank you. Okay. Okay, so the next item is, because this is above my, is item 3, it's discussion, possible approval to authorize the mayor to execute agreement with fleet management in the amount of not to exceed $39,000 for lease of public works vehicles. As you all know, the vehicles in public works are leased. It costs us about $6,500 a piece for 6 units. So 6,500 times 6 is roughly 39,000. So it comes out to 500 a month for our trucks. So, which is pretty reasonable in this day and age for a car payment, basically. So, but because we do the whole contract in once, I need your agreement that I can continue to allow us to have 6 trucks.
Mayor, what's the time period for this?
1 year.
For the lease? Okay.
1 year. Chris, we are, just for your information, we are looking at a mix of lease and buy. We're looking at a buyout on a couple of these. So we have a balance of I'm trying to ladder the age of the fleet. So we don't have 6 trucks all expire at once all the time. So we're thinking we'll maybe buy 1 or 2 for 24, 25, and then lease 4 instead of 6, and then that kind of thing. So, but
If we
at the
were to
moment,
buy them, we keep them for how long and then sell them used? Is that-
typically, I mean, because these things get used pretty hard. So typically, you get 6 or 7 years. So then we got to do this. You got to do the ROI on lease versus buy. That's what Katie's going to help us with. But also, when you lease, we have to do some work each time we lease a new one, because we got to put the light bars on and stuff like that. So we got to put those annual costs in versus not putting them in and just maintaining the truck for 7 years versus pretty much doing nothing for that. The year lease as far as maintenance goes is they run. So it's an analysis that they're working on, and we'll see which one makes sense.
Okay, so if we lease all the trucks for the next year, we wouldn't be buying any for a while, right? We still have to do the ROI and determine if
Right,
that's.
yeah, and I mean, what we would do is say for the 24, 25 budget, we would look to see if it does make sense, we'd look to like buy out these trucks at the end of their lease, which would be at the same time frame as the budget, because these trucks get turned over in June.
Okay, so it'll be a year, about a year.
Yeah. So
Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
we get basically they're on a fiscal year lease type time frame.
Okay, thank you.
And on the buy side, Phil, is it worth looking at, or I'm guessing you have, but procuring used vehicles?
We have, Ralph. I mean, and we can certainly, we've done that before. They come with incurred, additional incurred costs.
Yeah.
Because of what we do with these trucks. I mean, we've bought used heavy equipment, like an excavator or something like that. But I would say you'd want something no more than 3 or 4 years old. Just because you're not going to get, because we burn them out in 7, so. So we can look at that and, try and make the decision if the save on the used truck. That's a good thought, Ralph, and then we've done it in the past. We've had used vehicles in the past. I've also spent a lot more on maintenance on them. So we've got data to help us do that math.
Right.
So for the current year, we are, we're in a lease pattern, and this is what I need to keep the guys moving. So,
I have no more questions. I think you answered everything for me.
so again, I'm just looking for, there's no ordinance or anything like that. It's just a motion to approve me to execute the lease.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Chris. All right. Sherry,
Yes.
thank you. You okay with that? Ralph,
Yes,
thank you. Carol,
Yes.
hey. Chris
yes.
and Bob,
Yes.
thank you all. Thanks for keeping the guys rolling.
Mayor, I don't mean to interrupt, but we do have, I think you skipped the first two items.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped, somewhere I skipped the audit. I went
Yes.
down too far. I apologize.
That's
I
okay.
did. I'm really sorry. I did. I skipped to the wrong section. My apologies. Thanks for the heads up.
I can
Let's go
understand why
to
you'd want to
the audit.
skip it.
No, I'm very interested in it. So if take just a minute and introduce yourself, and then take us through it if you would.
Yeah, my name is Spencer Hinsey. I'm one of the partners here at Gilbert and Stewart. Want to excuse Ben. He's he called and told me that it was a necessity to go on a vacation, or his wife would leave him, is what he told me, his exact words. So so he's out cruising around with his wife this week. So he asked me to step in and do this presentation for him. So first of all, I want to say thanks for the opportunity to perform the audit for the town. I was a privilege to be able to come out and work with each of these cities and towns and everything we do. And we really appreciate you allowing us to do that. So one thing I wanted to mention before I jumped into this, with the discussion that I think it was Patricia had mentioned about finding financial statements. The state auditor's website does also include all of the financial statements for however many years they have, which is oftentimes a lot. So the last 10 years or so. So maybe throwing a link to their website to where you can go and search for, and it's not only the financial statements, it'll be a lot of other compliance reports and stuff like that, anything that's being submitted to the state auditor's office. All of those reports are there. So if you have any other information or need any other information, that's a good place to go to. But as well as, and this report will be there as well once it's been submitted to them, and they'll upload it there. But I wanted to
Thanks for that. That's a really, really good point.
Yeah, it's definitely all there, and the state auditor will give you even more information than you'll probably care to read. So, but it's in one good spot, and it also is a good spot to look up other maybe cities and towns that are relative to your size, to get a little more information and maybe give you something to compare or look at. So, not a bad spot to go to. But so obviously this is a big report. Looking about 60 pages plus. So I don't want to take all your time and completely bore you to death by going through every little detail of it. So I'll give you kind of the quick and dirty version of it and let you know maybe what you as the council might be the most interested in, just to kind of help you, and then field any questions that you might have. So as the mayor has up right here, this is the independent auditor's report. This is just really the first page of the report, and the kind of the most important part of it. So I actually think maybe that's not the right report. What page of the audit report is that? Maybe go down just a little bit more.
Well, that's the PDF page. It's not the.
Yeah. Oh, okay. This is the governance letter. So if we want to maybe scroll back up to the audit report, that would be great. Oh, maybe that didn't get in there. Maybe it's just that.
It's down past the governance letter.
Down.
Yeah.
All right, let's go down to that. Let me go down to that.
No, you're good. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
So you'll see there's a table of contents. And then if you scroll a little bit longer there, you'll see. So here's the independent
Yeah.
audit report. Obviously, Gilbert and Stewart is independent of Hideout. We've been hired by you to come in and look at your financial statements, assess risk, look at internal controls, do some test work to then provide an opinion on how those financial statements are. So this letter here just is really the summary of everything that we do. And this letter is where we issue that opinion to you. So you as a council, this is the letter that you would be the most interested in, just because it kind of lets you know what we came up with, or the opinion that we formed by doing this. So just right there on that second paragraph there, in our opinion, the financial statements refer to present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the entity. So that is definitely like boring CPA government accounting lingo, but that is your clean opinion. That's what you as the council wants the auditor to issue. That's the opinion that you look for, and that's the opinion that we arrived at. So that's a good thing for sure. As you scroll down through this letter a little bit more here, you'll notice that it kind of talks about, this is the responsibility of management. This is our responsibility as auditors. And then there on the second page there, this kind of gives you the bullet points of everything that we would have done or that we did to arrive at that opinion, that clean opinion. So that's kind of the main part of our audit report, and gives you kind of the summary. So great job on your part by having good controls in place and being in a good spot to where that we could arrive at that clean opinion. So as you scroll down through this audit report, it's kind of broken into a couple main sections. There's the management discussion and analysis. This is really probably the most informative and the easiest part to read for you as the council. It definitely gives you a lot of the highlights, and it kind of explains things in a much easier, way less boring format. So I would definitely encourage you as the council to kind of scroll through that and look at it and look at those main bullet points there, and it will definitely help you there. As you can see there, that in that financial highlight, you definitely want to see things like there was an increase in your net position, there was an increase in your unrestricted net position. So the town as a whole was moving in the right direction last year, and those are the kind of things that you would like to see. So the MD&A is a good spot to be able to find that information there, and like I said, it's just in a much easier format. So if you kind of scroll down through there, it'll kind of point out each section. We'll talk about your basic financial statements, your capital assets, and a few other things, but I won't spend a lot of time diving into a lot of that information. Partly one, because Ben was responsible for this audit, so he was the one that maybe dealt a little more and dove into a lot of this information more. I apologize that I'm not completely up to speed on all of it, but I can certainly try and answer any questions as we go through it. But again, I would encourage you as the council to look through this section here, and it's going to give you some very, very valuable information. So once you move through this management discussion or this MD&A section, you'll move to the actual financial statements. So this is kind of what was alluded to earlier with that question. The financial statements, these can be kind of, I don't know why we have to make everything confusing, but we do, and I apologize for that. So the financial statements are then kind of broken up into a couple different types of financial statements. This statement of net position, this will be the financial statement that would treat the government entity like it was a for-profit entity. This is your full accrual account financial statement. So this is going to show all of your fixed assets. This is going to show all of your long-term liabilities. This is obviously different than the governmental fund accounting that you're probably all very used to, but it's also very informative because it definitely gives you a full picture of what what the town is like as far as including all of the actual fixed assets and liabilities and things like that. So this statement in that position, again, that's your full accrual. This is going to have both the governmental and business funds on there, and it's going to give you the information on that. So there's your kind of your full big picture balance sheet. As you scroll down there, you'll kind of get into that same full accrual income statement. And again, I really apologize for this statement, especially this is not the most easy to understand the way that GASB did this, but that's just how they have to do it to report on government entities. So this will show again all your full accrual with your income and expense as well. So jumping into next, this is probably the statements that a lot of you are the most familiar with, or maybe some that you're the most interested in. So these are your government, this is your fund statement balance sheet. So this is going to show really your cash and your current liabilities and maybe some of your other liabilities as well. So, but it doesn't show those fixed assets that were mentioned a little bit earlier, and it doesn't show your long-term debt, just because we know in fund accounting, a lot of those are either expensed in the current year, so they're not on this statement. But so there's your government fund balance sheet, and then you're going to scroll down next to what would be your government fund income statement. So this is the one that's really based around your budget, and the one that would probably be the most familiar to you as you scroll through it and look at that. And then there'll be a report here, the next one, that will then tie that the government fund statements back to that full accrual. Basically, this is, hey, how did we get to the full accrual statements? And this report is the detail of how that happened. So again, if you're very bored and want to be able to try and understand it, this is going to be your kind of your answer key on how to get back to that. So,
well, I think you'll find that most of us come from a business background, and so we're much more used to business accounting than municipal accounting. So this is actually way more familiar than the municipal accounting that we've had to learn since we've gotten to these roles.
That's great. Quite honestly, I'm not used to that with the town council, so that's definitely a benefit to you. Yeah, government accounting can be kind of a different beast. Obviously, their focus is what's happening in the current year, so they've had to kind of tailor a lot of different things to make it match maybe what the goal of the government entity might be. So it's definitely a different kind of beast or different animal. So again, this report here is extremely helpful in working your way back to that full accrual report that was that for those first couple pages. So, and then if you then look at these and you're like, well, what the heck are these too? That's where you could really go down the rabbit hole and get into the notes, and those will give you a lot. That'll give you a lot of information, but I'll get to that. So as you keep scrolling down through there, you're then going to start hitting your enterprise funds. This will give you, the enterprise funds are a little bit different. They're going to be in your full accrual. So they're going to show your capital assets and your long-term liabilities there, just because those are treated like a for-profit entity. So there won't be a reconciliation back to what the full accrual reports are with that. But again, those will probably be really familiar to you as well, just because a lot of it's based around your budgeting or what you're doing as well too. So from there, you'll see your government, or your business, your enterprise fund statements. And so your balance sheet, your income statement, as well as your cash flow statement. I'm definitely a big believer, and I do think it's extremely helpful for you as a council to look at that cash flow statement, just because that really does give you, and it's going to be on the next page below that, it's going to give you the real big picture of where was all our money spent during the year. And it's going to tie it back to that beginning and ending cash balance, which is obviously very important to you as a council, as you forecast the budget going forward. You know, how much money do we have in the account, or where were we spending it? So this cash flow statement is a very good one to look at and work through if you have any questions on that. So that's going to be kind of the meat and potatoes of this whole report, or these financial statements. they're there in the middle. And like I said, once you scroll past these financial statements is where you get into the real exciting stuff, which is the notes of the audit report. So if you're ever having a hard time sleeping one night, I definitely tell you to pick these up and start reading through it. That'll get you asleep in no time. So, but it's extremely important in the sense that we can't obviously include all the necessary information to what a lot of those numbers are inside the financial statements. So these notes are, they'll give you a lot more information than you probably want, but it's also very needed. So as you scroll through there, you'll see the different categories and a lot more information on each one of those inside those notes. As you kind of scroll through there, you're probably going to need to jump down to page 54. So you'll probably need to skip quite a few pages there on that, get 20 or so. Again, so these financial statements, there's three main reports, and these are the three main reports that you as a council is going to be on. I apologize, I skipped over this part here. These are your supplementary reports. These could be helpful or useful to you, especially this one right here. Here's your budget to actual for the general fund. So just in a nice financial statement format. So that's a good one to look at, maybe as you're forecasting, or I know you were just talking about your 23 budget as well as your 24 budget. This is maybe a report that would be useful to you to look at and kind of compare and help you to move forward. So, so after these reports here, the second of the three main reports that we issue, because you're a government entity, obviously we as the auditors have to look at your internal controls. We do not issue an opinion on your internal controls just because we're issuing an opinion on the financial statements. But in order to get back to an opinion on the financial statements, we do have to look at your internal controls, see how they're designed, see how they're working, see if there's any maybe significant deficiencies or material misstatements that we need to either address or point out. As we do our risk assessments and as we look at maybe areas that the controls could be lacking in, we test those internal controls. So if you scroll back up just two more pages, this is the report that addresses what kind of work that we did in testing those internal controls. So again, we don't issue an opinion on the internal controls, but what we do point out is that we did not identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses with those internal controls. So I always do like to throw in that caveat that there probably is some internal controls that maybe be lacking or maybe could use some redesigning or looking at, just because it's always a fluid operation and looking at those. So, but we didn't note any as we tested and looked at those things throughout. So again, that's the other thing that you want to hear as a council. The last report there, if you scroll down one more page, this is the report that is for the state auditor's office, the state compliance portion of it. Every year, we as the auditors, we have to also do the government auditing standards, but then also the state of Utah, the auditor also says, hey, we also want you to look at these kind of things. So that's what this report is addressing. Those different areas rotate each year. There's a main section of areas that we have to look at every single year, but then there's another 5 or 6 that are on a every 3-year cycle. So this year, for the 2022 audit, we looked at those. You'll see there in the middle, the budget, fund balance, fraud risk assessment, restricted taxes, government fees, which was new for 2022. And then what falls into your every 3-year cycle would be that cash management as well as URS. So those are the main areas for state compliance portion that we looked at and we did testing on. That testing the procedures that we go through are given to us by the state auditor's office. So we go through each of those and we look at that, and then we address or we put out any findings or any problems that we have in those areas for the sake of the state auditors. If you kind of scroll down there on that report there, you'll see there's that opinion and compliance, and we noted it. In our opinion, Hideout complied in all material respects. So again, that's what you're going to want to hear as that council, that we didn't find anything that would need us to modify our opinion or give an unclean opinion on the state compliance portion of it. So again, is another good thing to point out. That first letter that you showed, probably clear back up. You don't need to jump to it if you don't want to, but that was your governance letter. So once we do this big 60-page report, we then issue this governance letter to you, which basically says, hey, this is what we would have found in the audit, or these are the things that we wanted to point out. If you scroll down to that second page there, you'll note that even just a little bit more, you'll note there that on the Utah State legal compliance findings for the current year, we didn't have any findings in this current year. But then we also do point out we're required to show the prior year as far as with state compliance stuff. So you'll note there that in the prior year, you had that budget compliance finding, and that was cleaned up in the 2022 year. So that's why we show no finding there. Overall, as a whole, as I talked with Ben and with my experience working with Polaris and working with a lot of other cities and towns, I can definitely see that in 2022, the town did a great job on clearing up some of those prior year findings or problems that were pointed out. Ben definitely praised the staff that was hired and said that they've done a great job with working through some of those findings that they had last year, as well as providing him the information that he needed and working through preparing this audit. So also I've worked with Polaris a lot, and they're a great company. I know that this first year of switching to Polaris and having them write the financial statements oftentimes can be a longer process than maybe than we would like, you would like. It just takes a minute to get all that lined up, and I have all the confidence that next year it'll go a lot quicker now that you've had a year with Polaris, so they'll be able to work through getting this audit report drafted and ready and given and presented to you a lot quicker. But again, I just wanted to stress that it definitely looks like the town is headed in the right direction and working through and doing the things that they needed to fix some of those problems from 21. And from what I can see, everything's looking really good.
Thank you. We've been on a mission since I've been in office to get better and better at this. And I'm glad to hear that it appears we're succeeding.
Yeah,
So.
Absolutely. Is there any questions anybody might have?
Council?
Hey, Spencer, this is Ralph Severini. How are you?
Doing good, thanks.
Yeah, good. Thanks for that run through. That was a lot for those, a lot of pages there.
Yeah, sorry, that's kind of like taking a drink out of a fire hydrant when I'm running through it as fast as I can. So
yeah, good stuff. Hey, a couple of things. One, going back to page 1, under responsibilities of management for the financial statements, in paragraph 2, it says, in preparing the financial statements, management is required to evaluate whether there are conditions or events considered in the aggregate that raise substantial doubt, et cetera, about Hideout's ability to continue as a going concern for 12 months beyond the financial statement date. So are there any findings that relate to, can you provide any color from your analysis on that? That's question 1.
yeah, that's a great question. And I commend you for even spotting that, because a lot of people don't. No, I don't see anything that would cause me to think that the town is not a going concern going forward. I will say, so from a government auditing standards standpoint, we're required to, obviously, we look at what's happening during the fiscal year that we're auditing, but that we're also required to look at the time between the end of the fiscal year to when we issue that report. And then we're supposed to disclose if there's any big problems. So that's kind of what that's alluding to. And again, it's your responsibility to let us know, just because we're not there, we're not a part of it, we don't know. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if that answered your question exactly, but nothing that I noted and nothing that I saw. And again, I don't want to use this as an excuse. I wasn't as heavily involved on this audit as I am other ones. So if I can't maybe answer a question that you have, I'm happy to come back to it, or Ben's more than happy to come back to you on that as well.
Well, it's always kind of good to understand an external view of, and
Yeah.
that's what you guys do,
Yeah.
as to what your view compared to, you know, the standards, but also compared to, I'm sure this is not the only town that you're doing. You know, how do we look, so to speak? It's always hard to get a picture
Yeah.
when you're you know, working inside the town versus outside.
Yeah, and that's always a great question. So I mean, obviously it's really hard to compare town to, it's funny to me, it's always interesting to me just how different every government, you would think they'd be all the same, but they're actually quite different. And a lot of it is just depending on the governing body of that year. So as far as compared to other towns that I'm involved with, I think you're right on par and everything looks great. So again, going back to that internal control structure, that really is so important to have, especially in a smaller entity like a town. And in that regard, bringing on Flores and hiring good staff and having good, competent people, those are very important. And I can see, from what I can see, Hideout is doing those things. So I would definitely say you're doing very well compared to the other towns that I'm involved with.
Well, I guess you can praise the mayor for doing a lot of that and getting the right people aboard. So more than anyone. Thanks, Mayor, on that.
All the credit goes to Jan for all the work she's done in this space. As you guys know, I mean, we had some, a few years back, we had some, significant findings. Then we moved to the next layer down. We kind of knocked those out. Then we got to the next layer, and now we're getting to the point where the findings are aimed at, process improvement versus financial accounting methods. So,
And a big thank you to Katie. Katie was excellent in cleaning up some complex problems that we have. And thank you again.
Hey, Spencer, one more question and I'll pass the baton here. So net position, which is on, I think, 2 pages after one, kind of like at a high level, it looks like we've gone up about 25% year over year. Can you provide any color? Is that about a correct read? And what would you say is kind of, if I had to look at our market cap, so to speak, from last year to this year, if it was a private company, I'd say we've increased our, our net, our assets and overall worth.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a correct read, or?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And
so,
I'm guessing your colleague probably had done a little bit more, but is there anything we can attribute that to mostly, or is there any big things that we're looking at that gets us to a better net position?
Yeah, so if you scroll down on that report and we go to page 7 of that MD&A, this is going to give you some comparative information that maybe would get us the question that you're asking. And again, I'd be kind of going through this with you at the same time as you right now, but so it looks like inside of your government entity, your current assets, so that's going to be your cash and other current receivables, went up quite a bit during the year, as well as your capital assets went up quite a bit during the year. Your liabilities went up during the year, but the increase, the amount of assets over the liabilities is where a lot of that net position is coming from. So if you go to page 8, you'll see there, as a whole, your total revenue went up about $1 million from the year before, and your expense went up, but not only by about 800,000. So that's exactly where that net position increase came from, was more revenue, less expense, and the purchase of more assets with not as much leasing or liabilities. So that's definitely a good trend to have.
Okay, that's good enough. That's kind of what I was looking for from your point of view.
Unfortunately, it's, as you're seeing in the projected budget, I mean, the people that we just talked about that are doing such a great job don't come free.
Right.
So we're spending a bit more money on folks.
Yep.
And the smarter we get about our, we had a brutal winter, and so some of the costs for taking care of roads and stuff are going to be up because of that, because we had to move a lot of snow like everybody else. So, so we're not going to be, when we close out this year, we're not going to be quite as equal in a great position as we were as a result of the 21-22 year.
Yeah.
But but that's okay. I mean, there's reasons for it, and that's what happens. Things happen. So, but by paying attention like this, we'll be able to keep managing the town, hopefully. Do the things we need to do. Okay, any more questions for Spence?
Looks like Patricia's got her raise a hand thing up. I don't know if she's got a question or not.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, okay. I mean, normally we don't have full public input on that. But
Oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I'm jumping again.
That's all right. Go ahead, Patricia. You can raise your question.
Oh, thank you. So, I'm not as familiar with municipal audits as I am with private company audits, but I learned earlier that I'm going to be able to hopefully access this kind of information on the state site, state auditor site, not necessarily within Hideout, so I can read it more, better understand it. But the fact that Hideout has a significant part of its expenses have been involved in legal disputes, and I'm not sure that's resolved, but it's not mentioned that I can see in the audit. And when you say there's a clean opinion, what does, or without boring everybody on this council meeting, where can you advise me to go to find out what constitutes a clean opinion in a municipal audit versus private sector?
Yeah, that's a very deep question. So obviously there's going to be a lot of different items or different reasons that would then force us as auditors to modify that opinion. So clean opinion is kind of a term that's not the technical term. You've got modified and unmodified. So the unmodified is your clean opinion, if you will. But so a modified opinion, there's a lot of different reasons why we might modify that opinion. One being if there's any big significant deficiencies, those would come from if there's internal controls that are lacking or maybe not functioning as they should, or if there's any material misstatements. And those are going to be, again, the financial statements are the responsibility of you as the town. So if we're given financial statements or documentation that have huge material misstatements, then we can't really rely on them. So that would be another reason why that would be a modified or an unclean opinion, if you will. So there's a lot of different things that could cause that to happen. So there's no real direct, hey, this is what that means. But again, focusing on those three main reports that we issue as auditors, looking at internal controls, as well as looking at state compliance, that is what's going to drive that main opinion. So in the event that there was a modified opinion because there was a significant deficiency or whatever the case may be, we would definitely disclose that. And it also requires a response from the entity. So in the case that we do have to issue an unclean opinion or whatever, there would be a lot of documentation or a lot of explanation as to why it was. So I hope that answers your question. It'd be really hard to find that just if you're just looking, but if there is a situation that it does happen, all that information will be provided with the report.
Specifically, just as a reminder for your question, Patricia, this is the fiscal year ending in June of 22. Most of our legal fees ratcheted up in the last year, the current year. The town and its representatives are empowered to do its best to enforce the law as it stands, and the law is open to interpretation by everyone. But eventually it gets adjudicated and we have a decision. So we've been fighting hard to protect the people of the town, and that sometimes creates different opinions with other folks, and that's why we end up with lawsuits. So it is what it is. But I'm not going to suggest that the town or its elected officials do anything but do their best to uphold the law as we understand it. And if the lawsuits come, we'll deal with them. Okay. Thanks again, Spencer.
You bet.
Appreciate it. And we're going to move on. So you don't have to sit through the rest of our meeting unless you're dying to learn more about the town of Hideout.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm going to excuse myself and see if I can't catch my high schooler's last softball game for the day. So I appreciate your
There
help.
you go. I would highly recommend that.
Okay. Thank you, guys. I sure appreciate meeting you.
Appreciate it. Thanks again. Thanks for all your help. All right. We have on here a item 2, which is adopting a resolution to amend the fee and rate schedule, including water rate increase beginning July 1 and an increase in fees. At the same time, we have some issues with the fee and rate schedule. One being the cost of water meters that I covered earlier that we've got to sort out. And Jan has contacted me and said there are a couple other areas that we need to do some work on. She's recommending that we defer this. I think we have to raise the rates for the water because our costs are going up from JSSD. So I think, Polly, can we adopt a portion of it and then come back and do the rest?
Absolutely. Or another idea I just had was that when we do do the public hearing and adoption of the amended budget,
Good idea.
we could do it then, because that'll be before, this would be effective July 1 anyway. So
Yeah.
we could do it at that next meeting.
Jan, would that work for you? Because we're still 10 days off or whatever it is before the next meeting.
Yes, that's great. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. So do I need a motion to continue that until the meeting to be scheduled later in June?
Yeah,
Or can
sure.
I just do that?
Then no public hearing is required, so it just needs 24-hour notice generally.
Okay. So then we're just gonna continue that then.
Yeah.
unless council sees a reason just not to. Okay. All right, item 4. Let's see if I can find them.
And I sent you a copy of an ordinance that you could pull up
Yeah,
on your
and
screen.
I'll pull that up.
Would you like me to introduce this, or Alicia, do you want to?
I have it. I just need a second.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know I could introduce the concept, the reason for it.
I have an ordinance amending time of filing.
Yep, that's it.
Is that's it? Because it talks
we-
about in here, the
Content.
28-day financial report.
Yeah, that's where we have it in our code. Should just look really
Okay.
quick at the hideout.
Well, if we want to move it at another point, we can do that.
Yeah, I think the one thing, just as a informational, I sent this out this morning. I just learned that the governor's office is switching the election date and primary date this year. Highly unusual, unprecedented. So let me see. Campaign finance.
Yeah, there's one of the Congress members has resigned. The U.S. Congress members from the state of Utah has resigned, and they would like to have that position filled before the election process starts, per the governor's message. So,
Yeah.
so
2450.
is this the right thing you want to see, Polly?
Yeah, so why don't we do this? Is I just want to just double check something. Maybe we can move on to committee updates and then come back to this. Does that sound good?
Sure. We can do that. All right. We'll come back to item 4. We've covered the other items, push the rate discussion until later in the month. So let's go to committee updates. And Glynis, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Yep. There you are. So would you be so kind as to update on the planning commission, because there's a lot going on there.
Okay. We'll be discussing the nightly rental overlay zones. And then I believe, because it's our second public hearing, we may make a recommendation on the Bloom project. We'll be discussing the MDA and the rezone. Any questions on that? Then go ahead.
Just want to say to the planning commission, to you and the rest of the planning commission, thanks for all you do. There's a lot going on, and it takes a lot of time.
It's only just hard to keep it straight. And here's an example. The other item we'll be discussing is a concept plan review. This time of Hideout Point with an E, which is different from what we looked at last month, which was Hideout Point without an E. So anyway, Hideout Point with an E is, it looks like it's a neighborhood mixed use project we'll be looking at. It's below the claims subdivision. So I don't really know much about that yet. I just saw pictures.
I think it's actually it's just below the Deer Springs subdivision, I think.
No, I think that's the one without the E.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's just,
That's correct.
oh,
The
yeah,
one
I
with,
know what you're
one without the E is the one at Bellevue, at the base, at the entrance to Deer Springs at Bellevue.
That
and
we
that
looked
was-
at last
sorry.
month.
That's right.
So Hideout Point is the one at the piece of property that's just on the other side of,
248.
or is that the one at the park's entrance? I'm really confused. The
The
one with the E is at the park entrance?
one without the E
Oh.
is at the park entrance. And the one with the E is across 248. On the other side of 248, I believe below Claim, but I didn't have a map to locate it exactly. Thomas, maybe you can help.
I think it's actually on the property that's between Claim and what is that, the Wolf property, the single house there. I think
It's the other side of the Wolf it's the other side of the Wolf property.
right. It's
Between there
tucked
and
up in there.
Between there and Deer Mountain.
Yep. There's one that's tucked up
Yes.
in there, and that's the one that's forthcoming. That one has not yet been heard by the planning commission, as Glennis noted.
Okay.
And I believe that's it.
Wow. Well, again, thanks, Glynis and council. The planning commission is going through a lot. So to the point where we should probably all be listening or listening to the minutes or the recordings, so we can, when it comes to us, we're not completely surprised by what it is. All right, community engagement. Sorry, any other questions for Glynis? Sorry. Okay, community engagement, Sherry.
Yes, hi. We are working on a couple of events this summer. We actually reduced the number of events because we've had a challenge finding a venue, and the state park won't be open until August. So right now we have something in July and something in August, and we'll probably do another event in September. Last year we only used about $3,500 of our $10,000 budget. We had a grant from Rocky Mountain Power in the amount of $2,500 for community events. This year, it looks like we'll be getting that again. And All West has also already given us $1,500 towards community events. So if we only do a limited number of events, we probably won't need our entire budget. And we could also look at making these events more of a revenue generating thing for the town. If the council wishes, we could charge more for concerts and have them pay for themselves, or generate revenue from merchandise and concert tickets. So you just have to let me know what you desire from that. We have our next meeting next week on the 15th. So we'll be setting ticket prices and talking about the budget at that point.
Any questions for Sherry? Okay, thank you, Sherry. Anything new on the post side, Chris?
There's always something going on the post side. We had our meeting on May 30th, and right after that, there was the Mountain Trails Foundation open house. We had 3 members of the committee attend that. We did some networking. What we're going to be working on now is, so Jan's got some things going on with the regional trails meeting she attended recently, working on some grant opportunities. Thomas also mentioned a grant opportunity. So if you all recall, in the post plan that we adopted I think it was last year, which was a part of the general plan, we have what we call the spine trail, which is a transportation trail that essentially goes from end to end through Hideout and links Summit County to Summit County through Hideout. And it's a different kind of trail than we've built It would be like a hard surface paved trail that requires some engineering. So it's a lot more expensive than any of the backcountry trails we've been building or the backcountry trails that we're going to be working with Claim on in the near future. So that requires engineering and study, and we have to spend money to figure out how much what it would take to build in order to then try to push the project forward through various, landowners and land like UDOT. And anyway, my point is that we have to spend some money to do the engineering to figure out what we can do. So that's something that's really very important for us. And I think, hoping we're going to get some traction on that before early July. Meantime, I did have a great discussion with Jason Whitaker, the park manager. Did find out, as Sherry mentioned, that the Ross Creek area, the whole Ross Creek recreation area, is going to remain closed. They're about 2 months behind in construction of the day use area in that part of the state park. So they don't want anybody in there. No pedestrians, no bikes, no cars, no fishermen, no kayakers, nobody in that part of the park. And it's likely not going to be opened again till, they didn't really have a date. He said late July, mid to late July, which means we really wouldn't be able to plan any events of any sort, whether it's a concert or trail maintenance, or even a grand reopening, whatever ideas we might have. That none of that's going to happen until August at the earliest. So that was news. Now, Mayor, I also had that conversation that I think we've been meaning to have with the park manager about the potential of a local access pass. So I have to catch you up on that, but that was a conversation item. And as a result, I called Katie and I asked for more budget money into parks, into the parks budget for the next fiscal year. Nothing's finalized at all. It was just the beginning of a conversation indicating that we need to get together, the town plus, the other communities that are around the state park and come up with an agreement on a local access pass. Beside that, we're trying to get some traction on open space preservation. I don't have anything to report yet, but I'm hoping Jan might have arranged a guest speaker at one of these council meetings to talk about land preservation. And I think that covers most of it. Thomas or Jan, if you had anything that I've forgotten, that's important. Please let us know.
I think you got it.
Thank you.
That's a lot, Chris, in a short period of time. So,
well, the thing is,
good job.
If you can focus, if you can find time to focus, you can get things done. And, we have a really good committee. I want to commend Kathleen for being an awesome leader for us as well. She really keeps us on track.
Yeah. Thanks, Kathleen. I see you're on. So public girls. Good job. Thanks, Chris. Going to move on to transportation and Carol. Anything new on that front?
Yes, it's not totally new. The silver bus is running all summer and it will run into fall. That's the bus that goes to Richardson Flat. And they have changed their hours. They begin at 6:45 in the morning starting for Richardson Flat into Park City, into the transit center. And then the last bus out is 7:45 p.m. Again, doesn't help us because if we go in for the Egyptian or to dinner, whatever, it's really early. And it runs every 40 minutes. The other thing I wanted to comment on was that I was contacted by someone who will be moving into Hideout, and she had a question or an idea. She wondered if we could get together a group of people in the winter that would be willing to go in on a private shuttle to the ski resorts. And I haven't gotten back to her. I'd like to put her on my committee, since I don't have anybody on my committee. But I'm just wondering, it looks like the Silver Bus will be running again from Richardson Flat this winter, and they run a little more often. It was considered successful. So since Richardson Flat is so close to us, I just wondered if it might be easier for people to drive there and get on the bus, rather than trying to hire a private company to go around door to door to pick up skiers. But I would like some input on that, if people think it's a good idea and if I should pursue it.
Well, Carol, I think there's still no way to get, well, I think you can get to Deer Valley on the Silver Bus by going to the transit center and then doing a quick transfer,
Yes.
right?
Right.
But Park City and Canyons, base areas, not so easy to get to on the Silver Bus.
Park City
think-
base, you can transfer at the high school. And that's what most people have been doing. They get off the bus at the high school and then they can pick up a bus direct to Park City.
Okay.
As far as
Good.
canyons go, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything. I mean, that's not easy to go in that direction.
Right.
Well, I think it's an intriguing idea to have a ski bus for the town. I wonder what it would take for people to leave their cars at home and not drive themselves.
Right. And
I
I'm concerned about the expense. I think it would be quite pricey, especially if it's door-to-door service.
Well, I think we'd have to compromise on the door-to-door part, but if we could park at Richardson's just the same, and it's a public parking lot, and have the bus collect people there, but be going, we'd have to do some kind of bus pass, but have it go straight to one of the two resorts, at certain time frequencies. It might be nice, particularly on busy ski days, to, where parking is a pain. I mean, Deer Valley closed their parking on the order of 15 days this winter. The canyons, Cottonwoods were closed 30 days or something this winter for various times. So everybody came up here and made skiing more challenging. I think it's intriguing as well, Chris. I mean, I don't know, if it's.
You think we
I
can
know
make
people
money
will
on
do
it?
when I see what the
You know,
price tag is, but I
We
think
could make
it's worth
money on it,
figuring it out.
Mayor?
You
You
know
know?
what? There are a lot of people, especially down in my neighborhood, who work over either at Deer Valley, mostly at Deer Valley, but they don't take the bus because you have to make that transfer.
Right.
And it just adds to their time and the time they have to get up in the morning. So there could be the potential, because of so many people working, to do some kind of bus thing. And Carol, I'll be on your committee. This is Glynis.
Oh, great, Glynis. Okay. I do want to make the comment that they haven't set the schedule for next winter. I know they've gotten a lot of feedback that people are disappointed that Silver Bus doesn't run directly to the resorts. So it could be a potential this coming winter that they will try to figure out a way to run the buses to the resorts as opposed to the transit center. So, very originally, they were supposed to run to Fresh Market, the big kind of transit area right in front of Fresh Market. And
Yeah.
then it would have been easier to catch a bus to the resort. So, and then it was going to still go on to the transit center where you could catch a bus to Deer Valley. but they haven't come up with the schedule yet for winter. They only have gone so far as to go into the fall. And in particular, they're very interested on Silly Sunday, because apparently the parking lot for Silly Sunday, China Bridge, filled up before noon. And then there were issues with where people are going to park. So I guess it was very successful on Sunday to run from Richardson Platte.
Maybe they'll make it more frequent on Sundays.
They might, like it's still kind of a work in progress, but I think we should look and see what they're planning for their schedule for winter. Because it may be that they will try to get to the resorts directly as opposed to having to transfer. So I'll just keep following it.
I don't think it would hurt to have, if your committee, your now growing committee,
Yes,
had
that's great.
did a little bit of research just to see what a
private shuttle,
a private minibus of some size. I mean, it has to be of a size because people are going to get on with skis and boards and all that kind of stuff.
right?
So it can't, and so we have to think about that. Is it doing a lot of runs with 12 people, or is it doing fewer runs when holding out for 24 passengers or some number like that? I don't know. I mean, those guys know this stuff better than we do. So reaching out to a couple of those guys just to get a sense of what it would take to do that would be interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, and if it's a Hideout bus, the Hideout residents ride for free, and then everybody else has to pay, or what's the?
Well, I like that, Chris. I don't know about
But then how
free,
do you
but
prove?
discounted.
Pull out your driver's license. What do you get? Like a wristband? Anyway,
No,
there's a lot of
we would
details.
have to issue passes. We'd have to issue residence passes.
Residence passes, right? But I mean, I'm actually curious if something like that would make money. I don't know
Yeah, I think
how.
it's a
It would
great
have to
idea.
have a lot of ridership, but it's an intriguing idea, and it would be interesting to see how it pencils out.
Well, I know from my standpoint, I take a driver now who started a company, and he's been telling me that he's almost dedicated to this area. He said it's never happened before. His in-laws live over in Tuhei, and he's expanding his company. He's been around here for quite a bit. And he just said there's so many people now from the Hideout area that for me, like I take them to the airport for my trips rather than driving at this point. Certainly in the wintertime, I started, really doing it regularly. But anyway, he said there's a lot more activity here, and he expects a lot more. He's investing a lot more. I mean, he could be one kind of person to talk to because his business now is definitely focused on the Hideout area, from what he tells me. Anyway, food for thought, Carol. As to
Ralph,
where we
can you
might.
please send me his name or the name of his new company so I can
Yeah,
contact?
it's just a gentleman, but I know he's got a group that he works with, and he's just telling me, he's investing in this area. So, he's one of the he understands the dynamics of our area. I'll pop that to you afterwards, Carol. Definitely.
Great. Thanks, Ralph.
I'm imagining a black car shuttle to the ski resort. Sounds
Yeah.
awesome. I don't know where the board goes, but yeah, sounds awesome.
But here's the thing, Chris. He's about 20 to 25% lower because he's building volume than like Park City Limo, et cetera. And that's one reason I switched him, and he goes, yeah, and he says, I'm investing in this area. So that might mean some other folks are too. Don't know.
All right, thanks, Ralph. Thanks, Carol. Always fascinating to hear what's going on with transportation.
Okay.
Thanks. And last review is Thomas and the DRC.
Hi there. We're still coordinating. We actually sent a second to final letter out. We still have a few outstanding conditions for both Lakeview and Deer Springs 2A and 2B, but otherwise they're both in good shape. A few outstanding conditions that we're waiting on, mostly relative to landscaping, et cetera, but should be finalizing that over the next month or so.
Thomas, a
Thank you.
question. Since we adopted a dark sky, are you finding that, you know, your design review committee is getting that the exterior light fixtures that are coming in are, you know, compliant?
Yeah, generally they're coming in with shields on all four sides and they're all downward lighting. Glynis is the representative from the Planning Commission. She's here, and Ralph is the representative from the council. He's here as well, so he could speak to that. But yeah, we are paying attention to that, and they're actually doing a good job of coming in with dark sky compliant lighting. I think, you know, with Wasatch County, Summit County, Park City, Hideout, with it becoming much more normalized, I think architects and builders are coming in a little bit more prepared.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
And at some point, Mayor, we'll probably need to do an economic development committee, because I know we've been in quiet mode. That doesn't mean we've had no meetings. There's been absolutely a lot of meetings, but we haven't had any updates.
Yeah,
And I think-
whenever you like, Ralph.
Yeah, I think when we want to summarize the right stuff in the right way, we can talk about that offline.
Yeah, you guys just come, you know, just let Jan know when you're ready, and we'll put it on. Or Alicia.
Yeah, I would like to know what's going on with the EDC. I mean, I hear about it in passing, and there's got to be some kind of updates you can provide us.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And some of the members on the committee want to do that. We've added some new folks as well, like I think Greg McIntyre, who is often on, he was on earlier. He joined as well. So got a good group. We meet together regularly. We've lost a couple of meetings as we started the summer, but you know, almost every Monday we've got someone who we're talking to. So, but we'll give an update on that, and maybe some of the things that we're looking at from a revenue standpoint. Katie's on all the time. I don't know if Katie dropped off, but you know, that's some of the core of the committee and a couple of other folks.
Okay. Good catch, Ralph. So Alicia, would you make a note to check with Jan for next month to see if EDC is ready? All right, back to item 4. So Polly, are we ready for this? I saw it just came in. Is that the one you want me to bring up?
Yep. So thank you for catching that. So there's 2 sections that are relevant to the changes in 10.3.208. And actually that section of the code, I think, has changed over the years, and we've just never updated it. But the changes that I'm proposing match what is in the state code in 10.3.208. And so what it does is changes the time when disclosures have to be made, and also changes what the contents of the statements are. They're generally kind of the same. I mean, there's, you know, a $50, you can do, you know, the state code doesn't allow anonymous contributions less than more than $50 in a calendar year. But so what you have up now is just the timing. It used to be that you only had to submit them, I believe, 7 days before, and then again 30 days after the election. And now you're required to do it also 28 days before, and then also 30 days after if there's a primary and you are not, if you're eliminated by the primary. And then if someone fails to, the clerk can notify them of the failure, and they have 24 hours to correct that. And if they don't correct it, then they would be disqualified as a candidate. And there's a very specific process you go through and notification to everyone if somebody is disqualified. And then the second half of this is, and sorry that it just, I hate when all that formatting note comes up. For the contents of the statements, the state code was also kind of revised over the years. And that requires an itemized total of all the contributions. And the donors, all contributions, if the candidate receives $500 or less. And then, you have to itemize it if it's more than $500. And then you have to, if you receive a contribution that exceeds the anonymous contribution limit, then that money has to be given either to the treasurer or political municipality or nonprofit. And you need to keep a separate campaign account. So it can't be commingled with the personal account. So, and we wanted to kind of change, these are the state rules, so they would apply no matter what. But we just thought it would be helpful to have these, changed in our code as well, so that we are consistent, especially as we are just about to embark in election season.
Makes sense. Particularly as we have a number of candidates that are put in for the council, and that's all about to start. So it's a good idea to get all this stuff refreshed and in front of everybody anyway. So I think it's fine. It makes sense for us to update this. And we just have to, remember that it's there. So when the state changes it again, we can stay alive.
So in section
What is-
2,
sorry.
it looks like there's, sorry, Polly, in section 2, is there an extra report that has to be filed 28 days before, 7 days before the municipal general election, and then 30 days after? I
Right.
remember it used to be 1 report before, 1 report after. Now it's 2 reports before.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
So Polly, just occurred to me, why don't we just reference the Utah State Code and just not have our own, just say, our election process follows Utah State Code 10-3-208 and be done with it.
We could do that. The only reason, because we are just following the state code, we are allowed to be more stringent than the state code if we want. The state code explicitly allows that. But yeah, I just basically use the state code language here. So we could just amend this to, let's see, I'm just looking at what our code says. We have a whole chapter on campaign finance. So if you wanted to go that route, we could. I would just suggest that we either do it at the next meeting or the July meeting, just because we'll change that whole chapter 1.26, and it affects more than these 2 sections. It would also affect some other sections.
Well, I guess, since we typically, we're going to always undo it at some point, but we typically follow the state code and not do anything more stringent. And by doing that, it simplifies the work that the team that has to keep up our code has to do. Is that basically, because unless the Utah state changes the reference number on municipal elections, we should be able to just piggyback on that and save ourselves some work.
Yep.
Just a thought. I don't know, council, how do you think? How do you feel?
I can't think of any reason why we'd want to be more stringent than the state code unless someone else can think of that. I
Me
mean,
Yeah.
If I can kind of chime in here, I know there's one, this is kind of really small and picky, and maybe I should just talk with Polly about it offline. But I know one of the things that they're, especially with that 24-hour grace period, the state code says that a municipality may charge a $50 fee. And, so we would want to probably put it in our fee and rate schedule if we were to, or if we weren't going to, I'm not saying not to follow the state code or adopt anything more stringent, but that's something we might want to consider.
I mean, if we put it on the fee and rate schedule, would that be enough? If we decide we want to charge $50 to the candidate?
Well, we could put on it
As a
just
fine?
fine per the state code.
Right.
Yeah, it's just that it's discretionary whether or not you impose that fine. So what Alicia's saying makes sense, that we could put that on the fee and rate schedule, just that if someone, just to make it clear whether or not we are going to impose that. I mean, the state code says we may, so if we put it in our fee and rate schedule, then we basically would be.
Right.
And they're going to be disqualified and fined, men optionally fined, right? Fine. According to this, they'll be disqualified if they miss their deadline.
If they don't fix it within 24 hours,
Okay.
then, so if they fix it within the 24 hours, we may fine them $50. If they don't fix it, then they get
Disqualified.
disqualified. And I don't think we get the $50 because they
got disqualified. Right.
Yeah.
I think it's,
That's
I don't
not,
mean
the
to,
way I read it. But
yeah, I think that's actually opposite. I don't mean to correct
no.
anything, but I
All right.
think it says and disqualified and charge the $50 instead of, anyway, I could be reading it wrong as well. So I don't know.
But let me back up and say, look, if we're thinking we want to come up with language that basically says we're going to replace this section in our code with a simpler, more succinct statement, which basically says, our code will say that we are following the code of Utah, appropriate codes of Utah and state, and that's it. That makes life easier, I think, and I don't see a downside to it. So I would say we could just push it off until the next session, Polly, so you can think of the right language for it. But
Yep.
I think that would, because then we don't have to change anything when the code changes.
Right.
When the state code changes, we just rely on the state code. Every time there's an election cycle, the recorder goes to the state code and issues it to the candidates.
Right.
Alicia, does that make sense to you? Are you okay with that?
Makes 100% sense to me, and I like it. So it makes it a lot easier on me as well.
Yeah. So if the council's willing, that's my recommendation. Just popped in my head as I was looking at this.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah,
Me too.
I'll take an epiphany. If you think that qualifies as an epiphany, I'll take it. I don't have a lot of those.
So Polly, do you want to, like you were saying before, this may affect others if we say we're
Yeah,
referencing the state code?
I'll talk to you offline so that for the next meeting or the July meeting, you notice it related to all of chapter 1.26 campaign finance.
Okay.
And we'll just, I'll change the whole chapter.
Perfect.
There's
Thank
still
you.
plenty of time because if there were to be a primary, it would be in September, And I think we've closed with less than 7 candidates, so I don't think we're gonna have a primary.
Correct.
So.
Right.
So we got plenty of time to get this noticed out.
Yeah.
So we'll defer that to July.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, you guys.
Well, unless Polly, you have any reason for us to go into exec to help you with your efforts, we can either look to adjourn or adjourn to go in exec.
I don't have anything unless the council, I mean, there has been a lot going on, so if the council wants an update, I'm happy to give one. But I've been trying to keep you up to date as things have been progressing, so I'll leave it to the council if you want to go into closed or not.
Take it as we don't need that. So.
Yeah.
All right, so then I would like to get a a motion to adjourn the meeting of June 8th, town council meeting, June 8th, 2023.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Carol. Bob, you ready to get off and go back to work?
Yes, I vote in favor of the resolution to close the meeting so I can enjoy this beautiful sunset that you can't see because my camera's blurry.
Yeah, Ralph,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
and Sherry.
Yes.
Okay, and it's 8:27 p.m. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hey, and don't forget, send some dates to Alicia. We gotta get another quick meeting in this month.
Okay,
Good
and
night.
don't forget to pick up trash.
Thanks,
Thank
Carol.
you.